Welcome back to the News at 10. We'll remain in Abuja for a bit with Ibrahim Adra, who has more on the News at 10. Hi, Ibrahim.
Many thanks indeed, Amarachi. Journalists across the country are asking the federal and state governments to respect the rule of law and the fundamental rights of members of the profession. Members of the Fourth Estate held peaceful rallies in Ogun, Kwara and Bauchi states, accusing government and security operatives of intimidating their colleagues for carrying out their constitutional duties.
Journalists marching through the streets of Ilorin, the Kwara state capital. They are protesting what they call the incessant harassment and detention of journalists across the country. From the streets, they moved to the government house to present a letter expressing their displeasure to the state government for onward transmission to the president.
Your Excellency, Honorable Commissioner, if we must sustain our democracy, then the safety of journalists is not negotiable. Yes. If our democracy must thrive, if Nigerians must reap from the dividend of democracy, then journalists must be allowed to carry out their constitutional responsibility. Yes.
A similar protest holds in Ogun State, where members of the press accuse the government and security operatives of arresting and badgering journalists while performing their lawful duties.
We are discharging our constitutional authority to report and write what is right in the interest of our dear country. So we want to appeal to the authority that they should stop all these arrests.
Not even the rain can stop their colleagues in Bauchi State from protesting. They later moved to the hall, where they also lend their voices to the alleged attacks against journalists and media houses.
We shall, by the special grace of God, strive to combat relentlessly the present unacceptable level of impunity, plaguing the country and deterring aspiring young Nigerians, just like our brothers and sisters from Atap, from embracing the profession, and those already in the profession from living out of frustration.
This rare move by journalists across the country is in line with the Nigerian Union of Journalists' declaration of August 30th as a national day of protest. And by this action, they are saying enough is enough.
Elsewhere, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, have confirmed that some officers of the Nigerian military have been arrested and court-martialed for leaking information on the operations against the Boko Haram sect. Speaking at an interactive session with the media in Abuja, the Army Chief explained that it was unfortunate that officers could disregard an order to move to a particular place, knowing that such action would not be tolerated in a disciplined organization like the Nigerian Army. Though he refused to mention the number of those arrested for sabotage, the Army Chief said those arrested are facing court-martial in accordance with military laws. He added that while it was impossible to rule out sabotage within the Army is taking steps to ensure that such things are restricted within the military. The federal government is asking member states of the Lake Chad Basin Commission to commit to implementation of the stabilization efforts in the region. Speaking at the end of the Lake Chad Basin Commission Ministerial Conference in Abuja, the Minister of Water Resources Engineer Suleiman Adamu asked member states to engage governors in the affected region to ensure the strategy gets political endorsement. Engineer Adamu said states must take ownership of the strategy for a successful implementation. And that's all from Abuja. We'll return right back to our Lagos studio, where Amarachi is standing by.
Thanks a lot, Ibrahim. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka has criticized what he describes as the Buhari administration's penchant for flouting the decisions of the judiciary under the guise of national interest. In a statement heavily laced with sarcasm entitled Buhari's Pernicious Doctrine, Professor Soyinka says the president must have thought about his own travails under a military dictatorship and concluded that it was also in the national interest. President Buhari had told a gathering of lawyers at the Nigerian Bar Association conference in Abuja that the rule of law must be subjected to national interest, a comment that has attracted severe criticism, especially from lawyers. But in a thinly veiled warning, the Nobel laureate states, the history of law, even where uncodified, is as old as humanity. Numerous rulers have tried again and again to annul that institution. Sometimes they appear to succeed, but in the end, they pay heavy forfeit. Professor Soyinka also challenges the umbrella body of lawyers to offer a robust response to the presidency as part of its conclusions. It was an unfortunate day for residents of Eliozo community in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Some woke up this morning to an inferno that left buildings, shops and other properties in ruins. Our correspondent Emmanuel Lerey reports that the fire was triggered after a tanker loaded with petroleum products fell on the road.
Burning flames, destroyed buildings and properties, utter shock and anguish. This is the story of the victims of the inferno that occurred on Air Force Eliozo Road in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. The trigger was a falling tanker loaded with petroleum products. Although there was no loss of life, for the victims, the destruction of their properties seems no less painful.
Because of the speed, when he entered this sharp bend, he can't control his movement. He now fell. Then the other fourth one went back. Then the fire now started burning.
Our property is damaged. Even my neighbor that went to market on Saturday, full of goods, up to 12 million, is gone. My rice, I loaded rice here last week. The same thing, everything burned down. So I don't have anything to say again. I just crying for help.
Henry Sunday grows flowers and other ornamental plants for a living. His once beautiful garden is a shadow of itself.
I just come to my office this morning and I saw all these incidents. And all of a sudden, the tanker here have destroyed all my flowers.
The Commissioner for Works in the state arrives at the scene. He laments the situation.
Look at the kind of times we find ourselves in this country now. And look at the grave losses that people have to lose as a result of maybe somebody's carelessness. But from what we see, people here have suffered tremendously, and it is very, very sad.
The fire is out, and the government promises to investigate the matter and reach out to the victims. But for now, they can only continue to count their losses. Emmanuel Lerey, Channel Television News.
It has become imperative for Nigeria to improve her database system for meaningful economic recovery. That sums up the opinions of speakers at the 17th Joint Planning Board and National Council on Development Planning in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital. The host governor, Ebikule Amosun, also promised his administration's resolve to remain all-inclusive in its decision-making process.
Coming out of recession is one thing. Getting back to a buoyant economy and sustaining that momentum is another. These economists, policymakers, captains of industry and citizens believe the Nigerian economy can attain its full potential. So they gather at the June 12 Cultural Center in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, for the 17th Joint Planning Board and National Council on Development Planning.
Solutions that create.
Their goal is to fashion out the role of stakeholders in accelerating the implementation of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan.
This is a time for hard work, serious-mindedness, passion, the preparedness to fight for what is right because it is right, and the resolve to persist until we achieve the desired results, because the dire consequences of failure demand this from us.
The Minister of Budget and National Planning believes confidence will gradually return to the Nigerian economy.
We believe that with the faithful implementation of the plan, we will be able to deliver a resilient and more prosperous economy. A country and an economy where we grow what we eat and consume what we make.
Governor Ibikunle Amosun then asked for increased participation from the general populace in policy formulation and decision-making process.
Federal government to build a globally competitive economy. I will call on all of us, the political class, the private sector, and the citizenry, as important stakeholders, to be more proactive in the economic decision-making process of our nation. The RGP program of the federal government has created the needed framework for growth and security of the future of our economy.
After 3 days of brainstorming, it is expected that the recommendations from here will be implemented to fully achieve Nigeria's economic recovery and growth plan for the benefit of the citizenry.
Let's check in with Kayode Kikiolu for the day's major business headlines.
Thank you, Amarachi, and you're welcome to Business News. The federal government's effort at reducing the delay in doing business in the country has received a boost through the launch of the Citizenship and Business Department located at the Ministry of Interior. The Minister of Interior, Abdurrahman Dambazo, who was speaking during the launch in Abuja, says the center will help reduce hurdles often associated with doing business by investors.
This project is part of our contributions towards the implementation of the presidential order on the ease of doing business. The government wants to encourage individuals and institutions and organizations to invest in Nigeria. And the environment for investment requires that it is done easily without much difficulty. And one of those things is to reduce the time it takes from the time somebody applies for whatever he's looking for up to the time he gets delivery of the service.
In the meantime, the federal, state and local governments are to share a total of 714 billion naira for the month of July, showing a decline of 107 billion naira compared to what was disbursed in June. Addressing journalists after the monthly Federation Account Allocation Committee meeting in Abuja, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, said 376 billion naira was generated as mineral reserve, or rather the mineral revenue, while 221 billion naira was generated from the non-mineral sector. She also put the nation's excess crude account balance at $2.3 billion. Now for some company news. Brewing giant Guinness Nigeria has released its full earnings for the period ended June 30th, 2018, showing a strong performance within the period. According to the company's financial statement, the brewer revenue grew by 13.5% to 142.97 billion naira, while an earnings per share of 3 naira 10 kobo. At the same time, the company's pre-tax profit surged by 273.5% to 9.94 billion naira. Net profit jumped by 249.2% to 6.71 billion naira, while its gross profit rose by 0.6% to 48.62 billion naira. The company's board has recommended a final dividend of 1 naira 84 kobo to its existing shareholders. And elsewhere, bearish sentiment continues for a third session at the local stock market this week as investors react to the Central Bank of Nigeria's hefty fine on Stanbic IBTC and Diamond Bank over improper repatriation of funds by MTN Nigeria. Chimeze Obiwagu has the details of Thursday's trading session.
Thank you, Kaide, and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Interesting proceedings today at the equities market as sell pressure mounted on all the major sectors of the market except the consumer goods. The industrial sector was heavily beaten, no thanks to losses by Lafarge Wapco and Dangote Cement. The banking sector was next as most of the banks were in the red except UBA, which added 5 kobo to its share price. And the reason is not far-fetched from the 20 kobo per share interim dividend declared by the lender. It is also noteworthy that the CBN's regulatory fine on Stanbic IBTC and Diamond Bank hit that sector badly, although both banks have issued a statement stating that they are engaging the central bank to ensure the matters are resolved. While Stanbic IBTC lost 1 naira 25 kobo, Diamond Bank shared 13 kobo of its share price. Only the consumer goods sector gained, thanks to Guinness, which released its full-year earnings today and declared dividend of 1 naira 84 kobo. The company's share price went up by 5.56%. At the sound of the closing gong, the all-share index dropped by 0.77%. While transaction value improved from Wednesday's close, the volume dropped slightly. And for market traders, they are in a wait-and-see mode as the month of August ends on Friday. And that was the stock market report. I'm Chimezie Obi Iwago. Back to you, Kayode.